Necron HQs, the Lord and the Destroyer Lord. Time for another Win with Necrons video.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, in today's Necron tactical video we're going to have a look at the Lord and the Destroyer Lord. Before that though, if you would like to keep up to date with the wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please give me a sub and hit the bell button so you don't miss an upload. Okay, so Necron HQ Choices, and believe it or not, we have 12 to choose from. Long gone are the days of just one HQ choice, that is for sure. Right, first of all, we're going to have a look at the cheapest HQ choice, that's the Necron Lord. Okay, so the Lord can move 5 inches, he's got a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, he's strength 5 and toughness 5, he has 4 wounds and 3 attacks with a leadership of 10, he also has a 3+ save. His faction keywords are Necrons and Dynasty. His keywords are Character, Infantry and Lord. So as you see from the stats there, the Necron Lord is pretty decent, especially if you look at the points. 91 points, and that includes his Staff of Light. Now the Staff of Light is quite nice because it's a shooting weapon and a close combat weapon. So if you shoot the staff, you've got a 12-inch range, it's got 3 shots at strength 5, it's -2 AP and does 1 point of damage. And as a melee weapon, it does -2 AP and again 1 point of damage. So a pretty decent weapon, although you do have the option to replace it with another weapon from the melee list. And potentially this is where the power of the Lord is. Now I personally think that the Lord is actually quite overlooked as one of our HQ choices. Mainly probably outshadowed by what a cryptic can offer. Now we're going to cover cryptics in a separate video, but the Lord is definitely not to be easily dismissed, and that is down to the fact that it is incredibly cheap. Now if you look at some of the war gear options, this guy can take a resurrection orb. In actual fact, it's the cheapest way to get a resurrection orb in your army, coming in at 126 points with the Staff of Light. And if you exchange that Staff of Light for a Warsaw, you can get it in for 119 points. Now to make him even cheaper, you could replace that Staff of Light with a Hyperphase Sword, take the Resurrection Orb, all of that 111 points, the cheapest way to get a Resurrection Orb in your army. Now the Resurrection Orb gives you a second RP roll on a selected infantry unit within 3 inches of the bearer. This is pretty powerful, it's very useful, it's great if you don't have ghost arcs around. You can't use the Resurrection Orb and the Repair Barge in the same turn. However, it is a once use only piece of war gear, and at 30 points it isn't particularly cheap. Now I wouldn't necessarily put the Resurrection Orb on some of the other characters, but on this guy, on the Lord, I think it's pretty useful. 111 points if you take it with the Hyperphase Sword. That is pretty cheap. Now not only that, it also has a special rule called the Lord's Will, and this special rule works on any Dynasty unit within 6 inches of it, and it lets you re-roll morale. Now that is actually a very good special rule. Allowing you to re-roll morale can be very useful in those blobs of warriors and immortals. Now not only that, with the Resurrection Orb, as I said, it's the cheapest way to get that Resurrection Orb. It gives you a chance to re-roll RPs as well, so if you're taking some casualties, your RP roll doesn't go too well, you can obviously re-roll it. Very nice for the points. Definitely don't rule him out. Now we're going to talk about character combinations in the future, but this guy with a cryptic in your backfield could be a very nice combination. Okay, so that is the Lord. How about the Destroyer Lord? Okay, so the Destroyer Lord, he can move 10 inches. He's got a weapon skill and a ballistic skill of 3+. He's strength 5 and he's toughness 6. He also has 6 wounds. He's got 4 attacks, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. His faction keywords are Necrons and Dynasty. His keywords are Character, Infantry, Fly and Destroyer Lord. Now it's probably worth noting that the Destroyer Lord is only one of 2 HQ units that actually has the Fly special rule. Okay, so that was the Destroyer Lord. Basically a Lord on a Destroyer base. Now the Destroyer base really helps increase the stats. So you've got better movement, you've got better toughness, you've got better attacks, and you've got better wounds. So really, really useful. Points wise, you're looking at 142 points. So actually not that bad, and that is with the Staff of Light. Now you could exchange your Staff of Light for maybe a cheaper weapon like a Warsight. The Warsight is still pretty good in close combat. Of course, you will lose the shooting attack, but the shooting attack is only 12 inches anyway. But you could definitely make this guy a bit cheaper if you wanted to. Now not only that, to boot, it comes with the phase shifter, so that gives you a 4+ invulnerable save. So it's really, really nice to have an invulnerable save on HQ, just in case you do get caught out in the open. And the Destroyer Lord, which obviously has that good movement, potentially is going to get caught out in the open. So invulnerable save on him, very nice indeed. But what is he good at? Well, he has a destroyer base, and the reason for that is he's good at buffing destroyers stroke heavy destroyers. Now sadly, he can't buff anything else. So unless you have destroyers and heavy destroyers in your army, it probably isn't worth taking this guy unless you just want a fast moving character. So what this guy has, he has a special rule called United Hatred. Now destroyers and heavy destroyers already have the rule Hatred, which this guy has as well, and that lets you re-roll ones to hit. Now with this other special rule, you can also re-roll ones to wound on any destroyer type unit within 6 inches of him. He also can re-roll ones to wound. So really, really nice special rule, especially if you're playing destroyers and heavy destroyers. The only issue that you have is your destroyers and your heavy destroyers are already costing quite a lot of points. So to buff those two units by taking a Destroyer Lord, you're investing even more points into those guns, especially if you're just taking, say, 3 heavy destroyers, because we've already discussed heavy destroyers in this video here. But potentially those heavy destroyers can go down quite quickly, and if you're taking a Destroyer Lord just to buff those destroyers and heavy destroyers, then that can be an issue. So you've got to be a little bit mindful of that. It's useful. How useful is it compared to other characters that we have? I don't know that it's worth the points, except it does have all of those wounds, 6 wounds, and it's also fast moving, which means as a mobile HQ choice with a reasonable amount of wounds which potentially could survive sniper shots, especially with that 4+ invulnerable save, that's actually pretty nice. So don't necessarily just think, I'm not taking destroyers, I'm not going to take Destroyer Lord. So I think he does have a place in your army, and potentially you could combine him with other fast moving units. Okay, you're not going to benefit from the United Hatred special rule, but potentially you could send this guy up with maybe some Wraiths, give him a nice close combat weapon. Okay, Wraiths are pretty decent in close combat, but they don't necessarily have that killing power. You could potentially put the Destroyer Lord in there with that good close combat weapon, a Warsight or something, and potentially help those Wraiths out. It's another tactical option. It's something maybe which other Necron players won't be doing, so it could be a bit of a surprise for your enemy to see this combination. And sometimes playing something different is more powerful than playing what everyone else takes. Now the Destroyer Lord isn't necessarily the best unit to use in this way. We've got, for example, the Command Barge, which is also great for this type of tactic. We'll cover that in a future video. But the point that I'm trying to make is just because he's a Destroyer Lord, don't put yourself in that box, oh I've got to take that and I've got to put him by destroyers. You know, there are other options. You may not have a command barge in your army, and the Destroyer Lord potentially could fill that role. So the Destroyer Lord also has the option to take a Resurrection Orb. Again, it's once use only. Whether it's worth investing the points, only you can decide that for your particular list. Personally, I probably wouldn't use it unless I had the spare points left over at the end of making an army list. However, it is an option. Now, both the Lord and the Destroyer Lord have living metal, so you can regain 1 wound every turn. Very nice. But the Destroyer Lord can also take, not sure how you pronounce it, Plysectory, something like that, which basically means you can have D3 wounds back for your living metal roll. It's 15 points. Potentially, it could be a good option, especially if you are going to go out and about being quite aggressive with this guy. Okay, so that's the Lord and the Destroyer Lord covered. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please put your comments down below How are you getting on with these two characters? Have you been taking them? If you have, what war gear have you been taking? What weapon options have you been taking? Let's continue the discussion down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Beam me up.